Hello, and welcome to Community Forum. I'm Dr. Chris Masetta, your host. First off, I want to thank you for tuning in and supporting this program. We have a great show for you tonight. If you or a loved one have ever been involved in an accident, whether it's a car accident or a slip and fall, or something that you ended up hurting yourself that wasn't necessarily your fault, then this is a show you want to watch. I'm sitting here with personal injury attorney Harvey Kulawitz, and he's going to give you all the information you need to know if you find yourself in this unfortunate situation. So Harvey, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me on the show, Chris.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm so excited to do this interview with you tonight. I've been wanting to sit down and have this interview for quite some time now because I know you're just so fantastic at what you do. And
thank you.
I know that you're going to give such great information to the viewers tonight, especially like I said, if you found yourself in a situation where you had an injury, what do you do? Where do you start? So anyway, thank you.
You're very welcome.
How are you doing tonight?
Okay.
Yeah? Good. So I really just want to dive right into it. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what is it specifically that you do?
I'm an injury lawyer. I've been in practice for 35 years. Handling cases like this. I'm based out of Ridgefield, and I've handled thousands of cases for people who are injured in accidents, all types of accidents.
Right.
And when people are involved in accidents, it's a very stressful time for them and for their family members.
Right.
So we are there to help.
Right.
And many times they're forced to be out of work. They're worried about medical expenses.
Right.
They're worried about their medical condition. Things change.
Right.
And we are there to help them. It's a very stressful time, and we're there to do the best that we can for them, to recover compensation for them for everything that they've been through that was not their fault.
Right.
That's what we do.
So it sounds like you give a lot of support as well to the patient while they're going through such a difficult time.
It's a lot of support. We're on the phone a lot with clients. They're calling. They're concerned about this, that, or the other thing.
Right.
We meet with clients a lot, follow up with them a lot.
Right.
We are there for our clients. You have to be.
Excellent.
You have to be.
So tell me, specifically, what does personal injury mean? You see the terms a lot. What can you describe that a little bit?
Personal injury is a situation where somebody has been injured through no fault of their own, through the negligence of somebody else.
Right. Right.
And they have sustained damages. And what we do is, through the legal system, compensate them for their economic and their non-economic damages. People, you hear the overused phrase pain and suffering. That's non-economic damages.
Right.
And the economic damages are, losing money from work, or having out-of-pocket medical expenses, or it could be a number of other things. Every case is different, and that's what we do. That's what we focus on.
And certainly, if you're out of work, it's a hardship for a lot of people.
What we try to do is make them whole again after they've been through a terrible experience.
Well, that's a great way to put it. And I know you mentioned a couple of different things, but what kind of accident cases have you handled? What's the majority of what you see?
Primarily, the cases are car accident cases. Most of the cases are car accident cases.
Right.
And they vary in degree. Some are very, very serious, really horrific accidents, and some are not as serious accidents, but people still get injured.
Right.
Different types of injuries. But they're still injured and their life has been impacted by that.
Right.
So I would say that's most of my cases are car accident cases, but there are other types of cases where people are injured as well. Premises liability cases, we call it, slip and fall accidents. Could be on ice, it could be in a grocery store and there's food on the floor and somebody goes flying or whatever and they really get hurt. But we also handle cases like food poisoning cases.
Oh, right, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Where people are injured by ingesting food with E. coli or whatever.
Would that be a situation like either in a restaurant where food wasn't handled properly or a grocery store?
Correct. A restaurant, or I had one case, a very significant case, a woman who was really seriously injured eating at her cafeteria at work.
Really?
And it wound up that several people became very sick. The state of Connecticut came in, investigated it, and when they did their report, we were able to go back and say, look, clearly this was evidence of food poisoning. This woman was hospitalized for like a week. It was it was a bad situation.
Think of the medical costs. One being out of work for that week, and then the medical costs of the hospital.
Expenses. Right.
Yeah. One of the things I, think of often is, why is it so important for someone, they've been injured, no matter what the cause, why is it so important for them to see somebody like you who focuses on personal injury as opposed to just a general practicing attorney?
Well, you could go to a general practicing attorney, but in my opinion, no matter what area of law you may need a lawyer, you really want to go to somebody who is more focused on that area. For example, if you need somebody to handle a real estate transaction for you, you don't want to go to a divorce lawyer.
Right.
If you want, somebody needs a divorce and people call me to handle a divorce, and I say, I'm sorry, I don't handle those, but tell me about your situation, and I can direct you to a very good divorce lawyer, or a bankruptcy lawyer, or a criminal lawyer. So everything is very highly focused today. And for the same reason, if somebody is involved in an accident, I'd recommend that you see somebody whose practice is primarily focused on injury cases.
Right. And I imagine, you know, there's probably a statute of limitations. Is that what it's called?
There is. There's a statute of limitations.
And what specifically does that mean, and how long is that? Because is that, you know, if an attorney may not be as familiar with that, and the case may go on a lot longer, or...
Well, the statute of limitations is very significant. It's a time period prescribed by law during which you must bring a claim, and if you don't bring it in a timely manner or settle your case during this period of time, you're forever extinguished from bringing that case.
Wow.
And in Connecticut, we have one of the shortest statute of limitations in the country. It's only 2 years.
Right.
Now, people think, well, 2 years, that's plenty of time. It goes so fast.
Right.
You know, that you can't even believe it. And some people call us just before the statute's about to expire, and they say, will you take my case? And it's a tough time for a lawyer to take on a case where you would have had 2 years to develop the case properly and try to do everything that you could to work it out for the client. Now you're forced to take it at the last minute, and many lawyers won't take a case in that circumstance. So you have to be aware of the statute of limitations. We are the insurance capital, Connecticut, so that's probably why we have such a short statute of limitations. Other states, New York has 3 years. Other states have 4 years. So
is it 2 years, did you say?
2 years, 2 years. Now there are other exceptions to that, but I'm talking primarily in negligence cases. It's 2 years. Now we have a dog bite statute, you have 3 years. So there are different types of injuries where we have different statutes of limitations. But primarily you have to think it's 2 years. But if you have a claim, my advice is to call a lawyer as soon as you can, if you are injured.
And that brings me to my next question. You know, let's say you are in an accident. Let's say a motor vehicle accident or a car accident. You know, what are the steps that somebody should take? You know, as you said, it's emotional time, and it's very scary. You know, in my practice, a lot of times, you know, patients are a little nervous to hire an attorney, and that's one of the first recommendations that I make, is make sure that they're legally representative. You know, so what are some of the steps that you would recommend that they do?
The first thing, if you're involved in a car accident, is to make sure the police are there on the scene. And make sure that the police report is accurate. If there are witnesses, try to get the names of witnesses. And today, in this day and age of smartphones, I tell people, you know, take pictures. Take pictures at the scene, not only of your car, but of all the cars that are involved. And then again, it's very important to get an accurate police report. Some people get involved in car accidents, like they're in shock, that, you know, they're surprised. And the other driver may say, oh, I don't want to call the police. Very bad decision. Don't do that. Make sure to call the police, because that person may exchange information with you and you'll never hear from them again. And I've seen situations like that. So the first thing is the police. And then clearly the next step is, if you're injured, you must get appropriate medical attention, either on the scene, maybe via an ambulance, emergency personnel, go to the hospital, and then follow up appropriately if you need the care. You have to get the care. I've seen cases where people are injured, and then they say, well, I'm not going to go to a doctor, I'll get better on my own. And then 2 or 3 months go by, and they realize they're not getting better. And then they decide to pursue a case, and it presents problems when that happens.
Because in the eyes of the insurance company, they may say, well, you didn't go for 2 or 3 months. How injured might you be?
That's exactly what they say.
So that's really important to have it documented. And imagine the doctor's notes are very important in a case like for you.
Very important. Everything from what happens on the scene, the EMS, the ambulance report, the hospital records, and make sure you tell the hospital and the ambulance people how you're feeling. First of all, most importantly, for medical reasons. But then that dovetails with the legal. So everything really should be accurate.
Now, that brings me to another question that I have with my patients when they come in to see me after, let's say, a car accident. You know, they're confused on which insurance they should use. Most of them don't want to go through
to pay their medical bills.
You know, either medical bills or, you know, mostly with the medical bills, which what I'll see in my practice. You know, and they're cautious about going through their own insurance. They want to go through the other insurance. You know, what should they do? You know, who ends up
It's
paying
funny.
the bills?
Everybody assumes, almost everybody who comes into my office after a car accident, they say, well, the other guy's company is going to pay my bills, right?
Right.
And in Connecticut, it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. Your best line of defense in terms of medical bills after a car accident is your own, in your own policy, you should have med pay benefits, medical payments benefits. Now, unfortunately, many people don't have that.
Right.
But it's a great area to look into with your insurance agent to see if you have med pay coverage. If you have med pay coverage, that's primary.
Right.
And what's very good about med pay coverage is there are no deductibles, there are no co-pays, and it pays your medical bills. It's your own insurance company paying your medical bills, and they're only too happy to pay your bills.
Right.
And then after that, once that's exhausted, and typically that's about $5,000, but you could get more. You could get 10. It depends on the company.
It depends on how much you want to pay.
How much you want to pay, but it's not expensive coverage.
Right.
People really should look into it, med pay coverage. And once that's exhausted, then your health insurance.
Then your health insurance
Then it kicks in.
Right.
But your med pay is what we call primary.
Right. And now, what if they don't have med pay? Then does it go through their regular health insurance?
Then it goes through their health insurance. But there are questions with that. You know, what if you don't have health insurance?
Right.
That's a problem.
Okay.
That's a problem. That's another reason why you should see a lawyer, because then we have to get the medical bills paid.
Right.
Because
you'll kind of orchestra to make sure things are
that's one of our first things that we look at is how are we going to get their medical bills paid? Is there med pay coverage? Is there health insurance coverage? So I recently had a case where somebody was a veteran, and they thought that they were covered by the VA, but the VA in Connecticut, it was a strange situation where the VA does not start paying unless somebody has med pay, which is exhausted, then the VA would pay.
So the other person's insurance, or no,
their own med pay.
Right.
And then this particular client did not have med pay, and we had a problem with the VA, but ultimately the VA paid. Right. But I had to get our local congressman involved. I had to get the governor's office involved. There was quite a bit to ultimately get the Veterans Administration involved and to pay this person's medical bills.
So some cases can get pretty challenging and pretty difficult pretty quickly.
Many cases get very challenging. Many cases get very challenging for different reasons. Yeah.
And with 35 years of experience, I'd imagine you've seen
sometimes you think you've seen it all, and then something brand new comes in that you've never seen.
Right. And so we talked about the medical, how the medical costs. What about your services? What kind of, like, how is that handled for your clients? Is there a charge to them, or is it, how does that typically?
By Connecticut law, we handle negligence cases on a contingency fee basis.
Right.
So our fees are controlled by Connecticut statute. And contingency fee means that we only get paid our fee if we recover money for the client.
Right.
And our fee is a sliding downward scale depending upon how much money we recover. The more money that we recover, then our fee gets less percentage-wise.
Right.
In terms of expenses of the case, we advance the expenses of the case. So it doesn't cost the client anything.
Right.
And this enables people to have access to the legal system.
Right.
Nobody's going to get a bill for me for our time. That's not how it works.
Right.
We want them to be able to come to the legal system, and this is how it's done.
Right. And how many times are most of these things or these cases handled out of court? I mean, are there times you end up in the courtroom hatching things out?
It's both ways. It's both. The vast majority of cases that I handle do get resolved without going to court, but sometimes we have to go to court.
Right.
That's just the way it is.
So
if an insurance company is unreasonable, and that could happen, you have no choice but to go to court.
Right. Yeah. Or if the other person doesn't have the coverage, or you may have to go and sort things out.
Correct.
That way. Okay. But tell me, you already shared a couple of interesting cases, but any particular cases that stand out that you'd like to share? There's just probably so many.
There are so many. I mean, I'm handling. Unfortunately, today, many cases are distracted driving cases.
Right, yeah, I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
And, remember, it used to be everybody would talk about drunk driving cases, and then you had the MAD organization and SAD organization, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, Students Against Drunk Drivers. Those were very, very effective, although we still have drunk driving cases. But so many cases today that I handle are distracted driving cases.
Right.
And it's bad.
So they can be distracted by texting. It's like a spaceship now. It's like Star Trek. you know,
the
these
car
computers
itself.
are so computerized between the GPS and Pandora
Right.
and all these things, you know, talking to your kids or eating.
Just driving home today, I saw a guy coming at me in the opposite direction, and I see you. So